Pull up a chair and settle in. Welcome to Fireside Scripture. My name is Joe. I'm glad you're joining me by the fire tonight. We're heading to the Valley of Elah, where two armies stood paralyzed by fear. We are going to witness the moment a shepherd boy named David stepped onto the battlefield. We will see how faith stands tall when it faces a giant. The Valley of Elah lay hushed under the morning sun. The army of Israel stood on one hill, and the Philistine army stood on the opposite hill. Below them, the valley floor waited, empty and open. For 40 days, a massive Philistine champion named Goliath stood in that space. He wore heavy bronze armor and carried a spear like a weaver's beam. His voice boomed across the valley, demanding a fight. Goliath stood defiant and shouted his challenge to the ranks of Israel. He demanded they send out a single champion to face him in hand-to-hand combat. He declared that the winner's nation would rule over the loser's nation. His words struck fear into the hearts of King Saul and every soldier in the Israelite camp. They heard his voice and trembled. They saw his size and lost their courage. The entire army remained rooted in place, paralyzed by the sight of the champion. David arrived at the camp with supplies for his older brothers. Discovering the tension that had settled there over days of waiting, he stood among the soldiers and heard the giant's taunts echoing across the valley. He saw the fear gripping the men of war. David demanded to know who this Philistine was to defy the armies of the living God. His words reached King Saul, who sent for the boy. David spoke with absolute conviction. He told the king about his life in the hills, where he had fought off both lions and bears with his bare hands to save his father's sheep. He declared that the Lord who rescued him from the claws of the beast would deliver him from the Philistine as well. Saul offered his own armor, but David found it cumbersome. He removed the bronze helmet and the heavy coat of mail. He picked up his shepherd's staff, chose 5 smooth stones from the brook, and held his sling in his hand. He stepped out from the ranks and walked down into the valley. Goliath saw the ruddy, handsome youth approaching and felt insulted. He cursed David by his gods. David continued to advance. He shouted that Goliath came with sword, spear, and javelin, but he came in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel. David declared for all to hear that the battle belonged to the Lord. Goliath moved forward to attack, his heavy armor clanking with every step. David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. He reached into his bag, pulled out a stone, and placed it in his sling. He swung the sling around and released the stone with tremendous force. The stone struck the Philistine, square on his forehead. It sank deep into his skull. The giant paused, staggered, and fell face down onto the ground with a thunderous crash. David ran and stood over the fallen champion. He took hold of the giant's own sword and used it to complete the victory. The Philistines saw their hero was dead and turned to flee in panic. The men of Israel and Judah shouted and surged forward in pursuit. They chased the retreating army far from the valley. The Lord gave Israel a great victory that day through the hand of a shepherd boy whose faith was bigger than his fear. David carried courage into the valley with him. It had taken shape over time, in quiet places, fields walked day after day. Responsibilities handled without notice, a life lived attentively, long before anyone was watching. This story invites you to think about how you live when no one is paying attention, how you handle ordinary responsibilities, how you treat small moments that seem to belong to no one but you. Those unseen choices shape you, quietly and steadily, long before they ever matter out loud.